Hello, dear students. This is our video 5 of our course, Principles of Economics. It talks about consumption theory. And as I said here, as you can see here, I said this part of Sherin 4. This is document Sherin 4. Document Sherin 4 was originally a Word document that I uploaded on your Microsoft Teams. I made that same Word document, I made it in the form of PowerPoint document. The reason is, once I have it on PowerPoint document, I can make a video recording on it, and that's why it is the same Sherin 4 Word document, but in the form of a PowerPoint file, that's all. And I said here, this part of Sherin 4, that this is the one I'm covering here, should be used in conjunction with chapter 3 to see the graphing and the tables. And for your information, this is video 4. Video 4 talks about my document, Sherin 4. But actually, I'm going to make again video 5, sorry, video 6. Video 6 will be covering that consumption theory from your chapter 3. Because I promised you in class, remember, I'm going to be covering the whole course of 03-101 on videos, whether you listen to a live lecture with me or you don't, okay? So now, what is consumption theory? Remember, this is, if you look at our course, it could be divided into two major parts. The introductory parts are covered by me, and it is exactly the 4 videos I uploaded. Video 1, Video 2, Video 3, Video 4, this is the introductory part. And that introductory part, despite that it is offered in this course, actually it is an introductory part that you have to know and you cannot afford to forget for the rest of your life when you study economics. Whether you study economics with me or with anybody else, whether you study that in our college or in any other college. If you decided that you're going to go to Harvard to study economics, Harvard University in the United States of America, or MIT, or University of Chicago, the best 3 universities in economics in the world, believe it or not, the information that I provided you with in video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4 are required for the rest of your life, regardless of the level of economics that you will study. When you will study with me the Principles of Agricultural Economics next semester, which is 03-102 course, all of what I mentioned in video 1, 2, 3, and 4 are required, and you will be examined in. Okay, this is something that is peculiar, okay, and pertinent to economics courses. There are basics in the science of economics, in economic theory, that you have to know, regardless of what course you are covering and regardless of the level of education that you are at, whether you're on first level, second level, third level, or fourth level, or even graduate student. What is covered, let me repeat that, it is very, very vital. What is covered in video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4, which is the introductory part in economics. These are the amount of information in economics that you have to know whether you are studying introductory course in economics, intermediate course in economics, or advanced course in economics. Okay, so now I'm going to cover, this is the second part now of the course, because in the second part, after we finish the introductory part, in the second part we will be covering the behavior of the individual consumer. Okay, why do we do that in the first level? Because in the first level, you know, you guys, all of you are consumers. Okay, so in that course, we will imagine that you have a certain amount of money in your hand. Usually it is called your allowance, المصروف بتاعك. Okay, and you need to spend that on the consumption of goods and the services. We are going to assume that you're going to spend that money on 2 things only, because we are going to use the 2-dimensional graph. And the 2 things only will be, let us say, because we're going to use food, because it is fun, because usually you guys like to eat. So we're going to assume that you have to spend that money between, let us consuming some apples and some oranges, or some apple and some bread, anything like that. Okay? So this will be the second part of the course. We will go into that after we finish consumption theory. Consumption theory is too many things. It has a part on the demand function, okay, of the consumers. Again, it is related to consumption theory. And again, we're going to talk about demand elasticities. And hopefully this will be the end of your course. So we are going to now cover the consumption theory. And then after that, we are going to cover the demand theory, okay, and then cover the demand elasticities. And this will be the end of the course. But in general, the second half of the course which starts right now on video 5, it is all about consumption theory. How the individual consumer can maximize his or her satisfaction or pleasure or happiness given the limited income they have. Okay, this is the remainder of your course. Here we have some assumptions. As usual, in any theory in the world, there are assumptions. Because without assumptions, you cannot make any theory. By the way, this applies to all sciences, engineering, medicine, anything like that. What are the basic assumptions in consumption theory? 3. Income is always a constraint for the consumer, no matter how rich that consumer is. Okay? As I told you, or as I have been telling students over the years, whether you are as rich as Donald Trump or as poor as the beggar in the street, income is a constraint. Income is restraining your behavior. You want to consume more, but you cannot because you have limited amount of money in your hand. Constraint here, it means qaid. Okay, so why do I say that? Why that is logic? Because again, if you look at the dreams of Donald Trump, the dreams of Donald Trump need more money to be achieved. More money than he already has. Okay, probably he wants to own islands, 100 yachts. He probably wants to be the ruler of the world. He probably wants to have to be called the richest in the world. Okay, if as opposed to the beggar probably all what he wants to do is to eat anything. Okay, so in order to be able to generalize, in order to be able to explain the behavior of consumers in general, okay, it means that the majority of consumers, believe me, for the majority of consumers throughout the whole world, in all countries of the world, at all times, income is always constraining. You wanna produce, you wanna consume more, but you cannot. And the reason you cannot because you have limited amount of money in your hand. This is how things go. Okay, as an assumption. So this is assumption number 1. Assumption number 2, more of anything is preferred to less of anything, which means that any consumer would rather prefer to consume. Commodity bundle here, as it is written, it is imagine that to be a bag that this bag contains amounts of different commodities. Okay, we call it commodity bundle, توليفة سلعية. In this case, when you have a commodity bundle, it means that, why do we say commodity bundle? In our example here, throughout the whole course until you finish that level of introductory economics, we assume that that bag contains a maximum of 2 commodities. Okay, a commodity, the amount of which is measured on the horizontal axis, and the other commodity, the amount of which is measured on the vertical axis. If you have commodity A measured horizontally, commodity B measured vertically, okay, then the bag or the commodity bundle will contain some of the amount of commodity A and some of the amount of commodity B. Okay, so here, as we said, here actually that example throughout that part, he will use commodity A, which is an abbreviation of the word apples. Okay, we're going to give it capital A for apples and the capital B for bread. We're going to measure the amount of consumed of apple, which is commodity A, horizontally. We're going to measure the amount consumed of bread, which is commodity B, vertically. Okay, because remember, in our analysis, because we do not have that much of sophistication in mathematics and algebra, we are going to use graphs. Remember, I in my last class, I showed you things about graphs and why do we use graphs in economics. We use graphs in economics in order to simplify the analysis and to assume that we have only 2 variables that we are dealing with. One of them is measured vertically, one of them is measured horizontally, assuming that ceteris paribus, everything else remains unchanged. during the time of analyzing the relationship between whatever variable is measured vertically and whatever variable is measured horizontally. Okay, so here we say more of anything is preferred to less of anything. You can imagine that as consumers are greedy. Greedy يعني طماعين. They want more of anything is better than less of anything. If I tell you, would you take 3 sandwiches rather than 2? You will say yes. If I say 4 compared to 3, you will say yes for 4. If I say 10 compared to 8, you will say yes for 10. Okay? Remember here, money is not introduced yet. So don't tell me that consuming 10 will make you pay more. Forget about payment. The assumption here has nothing to do with money. The assumption here tells people studying the theory that more of anything regardless of money. Remember, regardless of money, because if I tell you that you will be paying more for 10 sandwiches compared to 2 sandwiches, then probably you'll tell me I'm going to consume 2 because you don't have the money. But here this assumption is regardless of money. Remember in assumption 1, we said that income is constraining. It means that we always want to consume more, but unfortunately we don't have enough money. Okay? But in assumption 2, it means that regardless of money, regardless of the issue of money or income or anything like that, you would rather, as a consumer, consume more of anything as compared to less of anything. This is the assumption that I'm talking about. So he says here, which means I would rather, I here it means the consumer, would rather prefer a commodity bundle, it means توليفة سلعية, or a bag that contains 2 commodities, A and B, which has more apples and bread, to another commodity bundle which has more of A and B, has more of the 2 commodities than another commodity bundle that has less of both or less of one of them. Okay? This is what the assumption number 2. Assumption number 3, we say that this is a major assumption in consumption theory and in demand analysis. The objective of any individual consumer to maximize. Individual consumer here, usually they call it بنسميها المستهلك الفرد. Individual consumer here could be a family, by the way. A family that is composed of a father, mother, and 10 kids is considered individual consumer. The reason is they make common decisions. القرارات بتاعتهم قرارات واحدة. Okay? And the income for that family is one income. Even if by the way, even if the wife works, the wife's income will be added to the husband's income, it will be one income because it is one family. Okay, we call that family, okay, household. Household, it means family, okay? So the problem of any household, for any family, for anything like that, is to maximize my satisfaction or the satisfaction or the pleasure or the happiness or the another name will be called in that case utility in consumption theory, given my limited income. Remember, my limited income is a constraint. My objective function, the thing that I want to maximize, is the level of happiness, pleasure, or satisfaction, which we call it in economics utility. The word utility here, if you look at the definition of that in the dictionary, you will find that it is not what we are meaning here. What we are meaning here is that utility means satisfaction, pleasure, or happiness. But if you look at the meaning of the word utility in the dictionary, you will find that probably it means the things that provide us with benefits, for example, such as electricity utility, water utility, and so on. Utility here is an economic terminology that pertains to happiness, pleasure, or satisfaction. These are the major 3 assumptions in consumption theory. Accordingly, there are 2 theories developed. Remember, I'm going to go through the whole thing again in chapter 3, and you will find that there are some. Remember here, this part is copied from my Word document 4, Sherin 4. So we have some words to look at. In chapter 3, PowerPoint that is made by my friend, as I told you in class, is very abbreviated. But we have some graphs that we will be using and some tables that we'll be using. Despite that, I copied one of those tables in my part right here. Here we say that in consumption theory, there are 2 main theories that explain consumer behavior. Okay, the first is called utility theory, which we'll be covering first. بنسميها نظرية المنفعة. Okay? And the second is called the revealed preference theory. بنسميها نظرية التفضيلات. To reveal your preference, it means that to show your preference. Okay? اللي هي بتصرح بالتفضيل بتاعك. preference اللي هو تفضيل، و to reveal something it means to show it, to express it. And of course theory means نظرية. Okay, and here we said that about the revealed preference theory. Sometimes you can call it preference theory only. You don't have to say revealed. Okay, it is the theory that explains the behavior of the consumer utilizing the indifference curves. Okay, so we have a theory called the utility theory, and another theory is called revealed preference theory or preference theory, which is the theory that relies on something called the utilization of something called the indifference curves, which we will call it, they call it in Arabic, منحنيات السواء, which again is not clear for you. I'm going to explain it when we reach it. Forget about it for now. Okay. In the utility, what is the difference between two theories? The two theories that explain consumer behavior. In the first theory, we assign numbers to the level of satisfaction or pleasure obtained when an individual consumer consumes a certain amount of a commodity. For example, let us say that you consumed a Big Mac sandwich. Okay? In that case, when you consume it, you receive satisfaction. Definitely. That's why you consume it. Okay? We assign a number to indicate how happy you are. Okay? By consuming that sandwich. So, for example, we're going to say that if you consume, when you consumed your first sandwich of Big Mac, the level of satisfaction that you obtained is 10 units. 10 units. 10 units, the units here is called utils. Okay, utils, it means units of utility or units of pleasure. I know it looks like I'm crazy, but this is how the theory is developed. Okay, we assign numbers to indicate how happy you are. If I say that, for example, when you consume a Big Mac sandwich, you will receive 10 units of pleasure, or 10 utils, or 10 units of utility. And if you consume a filet of fish sandwich from the same Big Mac, you will obtain 5 units of utility, or 5 utils, or 5 units of pleasure. It means simply that you like very much Big Mac sandwiches, because when you consume the Big Mac sandwiches, you get twice as much pleasure compared to when you consume the filet of fish sandwich. This is the meaning of it. And the question is the number 10 or the number 5 have any meanings? And the answer is no. It doesn't matter. If I put, instead of 10, I put 15, okay, then by any number that I assign to the consumption of filet of fish, as long as it is less than 15, this is okay. Okay, let us give me another example. Suppose that if I tell you that if you consume one Big Mac sandwich, you receive 15 units of pleasure. But if you consume a filet of fish sandwich, you will obtain 14 units of pleasure. It means that you still prefer Big Mac compared to filet of fish. Okay, the numbers in themselves have no meaning, but the relationship between the number and the other number is the important part. What number do you assign to your level of satisfaction doesn't have any meaning, but it's all relative. You are comparing that number to something else. The same thing about if I look at, forget about the filet of fish sandwich. Let us say I'm going to concentrate on consuming one type of commodities only, Big Mac. If I consume the first Big Mac sandwich, let us say that, and let us assume that consumption of the Big Mac sandwich, of the first sandwich, will give me a pleasure of 10 units, 10 units of utils, 10 utils or 10 units of pleasure or 10 units of utility or 10 units of happiness. Okay? Then by definition, if I consume another Big Mac sandwich, for sure, it will give me utility that is less than 10, for sure. Okay? If I consume a third Big Mac sandwich, it will give me level of satisfaction or pleasure that is for sure less than the second pleasure, the second units of pleasure I received when I consumed the second sandwich. And the story continues as the more I consume the same item. Less units of pleasure will be added to my total happiness or satisfaction till I reach the moment where by consuming more sandwiches, I receive nothing at all. I add nothing to my total happiness. Okay? And actually, if you are crazy enough and you continue consuming, remember here, money is not in the story, please. Okay? You will hurt yourself, which means that you will reduce, okay, your levels of satisfaction from the total benefits or total satisfaction that you received when you eventually started consuming the sandwiches. Okay? So here in the first theory, we assign numbers. We put numbers to the level of satisfaction, level of pleasure, level of utility, levels of happiness obtained by a consumer when that consumer consumes a certain amount of a commodity. The number we assign in itself is not important, as I told you, but the relationship between that number and the numbers to follow is very, very important. Here it says page 9, the table. This is the table on slide 9 of chapter 3, which I'm going to go anyway through later on. Okay? Because remember, I cannot make videos, I cannot make recordings using 2 sets of PowerPoints. I have to work on one of them only. Once I'm going to be done with Sherin 4, inshallah, then I'm going to go to chapter 3. But for chapter 3, remember, I'm going to visit chapter 3 so many times. Because in chapter 3, the topics covered in chapter 3 PowerPoint that is made by my friend, it is the remainder of the course and much, much more. Okay? So this just to give you an idea about why we are doing that. Just be a little patient with me, and I'm gonna be covering every part in the course, so don't worry. In that table, I said here, I'm gonna go to the table in a moment because I have it here, because I was able to copy that table from slide 9 in chapter 3, and I put it here, so it will be the next slide. Okay? It will be the next slide. In that table here, I started with number 8. I put the number that I started with was 8. Okay? And the question is, when I look at the table, as you will see in a moment, why 8? Why not 9? Why not 10? Why not 1 million? Okay? And the answer is, doesn't really matter. Any number that I mentioned or I did not mention is correct. Okay? But the number I'm going to start with will affect. Okay? Because remember, I want to have a relationship between the number that I'm going to be starting with and the rest of the numbers. So why should I start with million, for example? It's so big. Why should I start with a number 2 or 1 and then I have to go to 0.3, 0.5 and why should I do that? It looks like a number that is reasonable. Okay? That when I make a table, the size of the table will be reasonable. Because, dear students, if I start with a very large number, okay, in that case the table will be extremely long. If I start with a very small number, then the table will be very short, or that I use decimals. I have to say 0.8, 0.7, 0.5 and so on. Okay, as I said here, I could have started with any other number. But note that always marginal utility, this is the addition to your total satisfaction or pleasure as a result of consuming 1 extra unit. Okay? It is the addition or subtraction from your total satisfaction or total pleasure or total happiness or total utility as a result of consuming 1 additional unit of the commodity. This thing, this marginal utility, this addition, which is marginal utility, keeps on decreasing the more you consume extra units of whatever you are consuming. So here, that's why I said, note that always marginal utility, which is the addition to or subtraction from total utility, okay, as a result of consuming extra units of the commodity. This for sure will decline. Why? Naturally. Okay, imagine yourself in Ramadan time, for Muslims, for example. The first thing that you put in your mouth, you say, wow. Okay, you obtain great pleasure. The second thing that you put in your mouth, still wow, but not as wow as the first one. And the story keeps on declining in terms of adding to your total pleasure. You are still happy, you're still adding to your total pleasure positive amounts. Okay, but that addition keeps on declining the more you consume. Okay, that addition, okay, as a result of consuming extra unit is called the marginal utility. How much you will add to your total happiness as a result of consuming extra units of the whatever you are consuming. Okay, this is a natural thing that God created in humans and animals and everything in life. In order for people, in order for human beings, in order for the life on that planet to stop consuming what they are consuming. Okay, imagine for yourself that the more you consume, the more you will add to your total happiness. And the question is, would you ever stop consuming? Suppose that It is even constant, not increasing. Will you ever stop? You will never know when to stop. Okay, because you reached a maximum level of satisfaction, and when you consume extra unit, that maximum level is constant. Okay? In order for you to decide on that's enough, okay, and to stop consuming, then marginal utility of your behavior, marginal utility of your consumption, okay, must be declining, which means that the addition to your total pleasure that you obtained when you consumed the first unit must be declining the more units you consume. Okay? Actually, they call it diminishing the marginal utility or decreasing marginal utility, and they call it a theory. Well, it is not a theory or anything like that. It is common sense. Everybody knows that. If you ask a 5-year-old kid, okay, if I give you a sandwich and you ate it, please indicate your level of happiness. He will say 8, for example. Then I'm going to tell him, what about the second sandwich? Do you think the second sandwich will give you more pleasure or less pleasure than the first? He will for sure tell you less pleasure, because when he got the first one, he was in bad need for it. If I tell that 5-year-old kid, if I give you a third sandwich, will it give you more units of pleasure compared to the first one or the second one, or less? He will definitely say less, because at a point in time he will say, thank you very much, I cannot consume anymore. The reason is because he's adding less and less to his total satisfaction or pleasure as a result of consuming more and more and more of the commodity. Marginal utility, which is MU here, as we said here, this is the marginal utility, is the change in total utility, which is the total satisfaction function, as a result of consuming one more unit of the good. Do you guys remember when I explained functions and the slope of functions, okay, in my last class, which is explained in great detail in video 4, okay? And the part of it is actually also in video 3. Marginal utility is the slope of the total utility function, okay? And it is the rate of change of total utility, okay, to the amount of commodity consumed, okay? And it is the marginal function, okay? And it is the first derivative of the function. Remember, if I have y is a function of x, if I have y is a function of x, as you see here, this is a function. Imagine this to be the utility function, okay? In that case, if I want to put utility, for example, here, I'm going to put total. By the way, utility, total utility, sometimes they put it as capital U only. There is no need to write TU, because it is the same thing. It is a function of the amount consumed of the first commodity and the second commodity. Let us say the first commodity is commodity A, and the second commodity is commodity B. But here we have two variables, A and B. Let us look at the function that has only one variable, x. This is a function. We call it the total function, the mother function. Then, if you differentiate this function with respect to x, it will be delta y divided by delta x. Okay, delta y divided by delta x has 4 names, as I told you before. Okay, slope of the function, rate of change of y with respect to x, and the first derivative of the function. This is all mathematics. Add to that a concept or a terminology we use in economics called the marginal function. All of that is the same, which is delta y divided by delta x, which is what happens to y when x changes by 1 unit. Okay, so likewise in our case here, total utility. Okay, total utility is the addition to total utility is affected by the amount consumed of commodity and the commodity B. Okay, if I want to explain what will happen to my total utility when I increase the amount of commodity A by 1 unit, I have to assume that commodity B remains constant. So in that case, it will be marginal utility of A. How much I'm going to add to my total utility, my total satisfaction, my total pleasure, my total happiness as a result of consuming 1 extra unit of A, given that the amount consumed of B is constant. If I make A constant, okay, then marginal utility of B will be how much I'm going to be adding to my total satisfaction or pleasure if I consume 1 additional unit of commodity B. It should be decreasing all the way, reaching 0. Okay, this is marginal utility. Okay, the total utility will be 0 when the marginal utility will be 0 when total utility is at the maximum. It means that when you consumed one extra unit, you added nothing to your total satisfaction. And we will see that again in chapter 3. Don't worry about that. I'm going to show you that graphically. Okay. So it should be decreasing all the way. This is marginal utility. It will be 0 at a point in time. And if the consumer is not rational, if the consumer doesn't know what is good for him or for her, and keeps on consuming the commodity, he will keep taking away, not adding, to his total satisfaction or to her total satisfaction. Okay? So it can become negative if the consumer keeps on consuming the item. Okay? So, and then if the consumer keeps on consuming more units of the good, it will become 0 and then negative, reducing the level of your total happiness. This is the table that I'm going to be using, and this is the table that we were referring to in our previous discussion. Here, the commodity I'm talking about, here I'm talking about one commodity only. Okay? So here in that example, remember, I am measuring the number. This, by the way, this sign, do you see this sign, the hash? Do you see that hash? Hash in mathematics, it means the number. Okay, so the number of oranges consumed. Okay, the amount of oranges consumed. It doesn't matter what do you say. It is measured horizontally. Total utility is measured vertically. So in that case, we have this thing right here. Here we have the amount of oranges. I'm going to give it O, and here's total utility. I'm going to give it U. Okay. And the function looks like this, simply. This is a utility function. Okay? The more you consume O, the more you will add to your total satisfaction or pleasure, but the rate of addition, the rate of change of U with respect to O, the rate of change of your total satisfaction or pleasure with respect to the amount consumed will keep on declining till you reach a maximum. That is right here. After that, the more you consume O, total utility will start declining. Okay, if you are not rational, if you don't know what is best for yourself. Okay, marginal utility will start here. Okay, let me continue that here to be like that, and I'm going to show you in a moment. Just wait for that. So the number of oranges here I assume that if I start with 0 oranges, no consumption at all. Okay, remember, just please do not compare my discussion to reality, please, and complicate things. Okay, here the only thing the consumer can consume is oranges. So please do not come and tell me, yeah, doctor, do we live in oranges only? We have other things. I don't care about that. Okay, I know that in reality it's very complicated, but in reality we do not use something as simple as what you are seeing right here. So please wake up. Huh? Here we assume that if I consume oranges, my total happiness will be 0. Okay, in that case there is no marginal happiness. Because marginal, it means the addition to the total as a result of consuming an extra unit. There is nothing here. Usually you put a hyphen, شرطة, undefined. Okay, not 0, it is undefined. Because 0 is a number. Undefined is not a number. مش متعرف, رقم غير معرف. Now I'm gonna increase my consumption from 0 to 1. Okay, I'm gonna assume that this will add 8 units of happiness to me. Somebody will ask me why 8. Okay, it could be any number. Here in this number in particular, it doesn't matter what number you start with. It could be any number, as long as that number is positive. Why positive? Because when I consume a unit, an extra unit of a commodity, I add to my total satisfaction. Okay, add, it means positive number. So I put it just to simplify, because in order for the table to be the size that you are seeing right now. Okay, there is nothing more than that. It could be any positive number. Believe me, it could be 100 billion units of utility. Okay, or it could be as low as 1 units of utility. But the question is, why should I put 100 billion or why should I put 1? Okay, one of them is extremely, extremely, extremely large, and the other one is extremely, extremely, extremely small. Okay, if I choose the 10 billion, the table will be, inshallah, from here to from my home to the College of Agriculture. And if I put 1, the table will be so short I will not be able to explain on it what I want unless I use decimal points. O point مش عارف ايه, O point whatever, O point whatever, and so on. So that 8 is any positive number. I chose 8 because it is a nice number. Okay. Now, when I consumed 1 extra unit of oranges, I added 8 units to my level of satisfaction. And that's why the marginal utility is 8. Okay? This 8 is calculated by making this one thing. 8 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0. 8 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0, which is marginal utility, which is delta U divided by delta O. Delta U here is total utility, divided by delta O. The O here stands for oranges, which means that if I increase the amount of oranges consumed by 1 unit, by how much units I'm going to add to my total utility, and the answer is 8. Okay, so here marginal utility is the same as total utility. Why? Because we consumed 1 unit only. Okay, not because we moved from 0 to 1, because we consumed 1 unit only. Okay, here it was 0, now it became 1, so my total satisfaction increased from 0 to 8, and this is the same as the marginal utility. Now after that, imagine that I'm going to consume another orange from 1 to 2. Okay, definitely when I consume 2, they will give me more total happiness as opposed to consuming 1, because I told you more of anything is preferred to less of anything as an assumption in consumption theory. So definitely the number that I have here, which is 15, has to be bigger than 8. Does it have to be 15? And the answer is no. Okay, but it has to be a number that is positive and must be bigger than 8. This is the point. Any positive number that is bigger than 8. Could it be 9? Yes, it could be 9. But if it is 9, the story will end very fast. Okay? But surprisingly now in that case, that number, despite that it has to be bigger than 8, but it cannot be 16 or bigger. It cannot be 16 or bigger. Why it cannot be 16? Because if it is 16, it means that the second sandwich, which is here, the second orange, which is here, will add to my total satisfaction the same amount of happiness the first sandwich added to my satisfaction, which is impossible. Okay, it has to be less than 8. Okay, so the second, when I consumed 2 oranges, the total must be anything bigger than 8 and less than 16. Okay, why? Because the second sandwich the second orange in itself, sorry for using sandwiches, but it looks like I'm hungry. Okay, because the second orange, okay, will give the consumer a level of satisfaction definitely less than what he received or she received when she or he consumed the first orange. Okay, so that 15 here is any number. Okay, remember the numbers we assign for utility or satisfaction are all not important. What is important is the relationship among these numbers. And this is one of the important relationships I'm talking about. That 15 cannot be 16 or more. Okay, but it could be less than 15. How less than 15? Anything bigger than 8. Okay, so now I want to calculate marginal utility using the same formula I had here. It will be 15 minus 8 divided by 2 minus 1. Why? It is delta U divided by delta O, which will be 7. Okay, after that, the story will continue. Now, everything is repetition. Now, I consumed 3 oranges. The 3 oranges together gave me 21. Somebody will ask me, why 21? Okay, remember, 21 here, because, remember, I look at now the number 15 here. Look at the number 15 here. The second orange, remember, the second orange by itself gave me, added to my satisfaction, 7 units. Then the third orange must add to my satisfaction a number that is less than 7. Okay? So I used the number 6. So 21 minus 5 divided by 3 minus 2 is equal to 6. Okay? Because remember, the 3 oranges collectively, the more I consume orange, as you can see, the more I go down here, total utility keeps on increasing, remember. But increasing in a decreasing rate, which means that every time I consume 1 additional orange, it adds little and little and little to my total utility. Remember, it is still adds to my total utility, but the numbers added keeps on declining. The number keep on declining and declining and declining. Okay? until I reach a level where I consume 6 oranges. 6 oranges collectively, they give me 33 units of pleasure. When I consumed a 7th orange, it is still 33 units of pleasure, nothing added. If I continue consuming here, unit 8, 9, and 10, you'll see that 33 will become less than 33. Okay, let us say 30, and then after that 25, and after that 16, and after that 5, and after that you'll be dead. And the number that you have here in marginal utility, which is counted the same way I showed you on the right, here it is 0, because here 33 minus 33 divided by 7 minus 6. It is 0. Okay? So this is the law of diminishing marginal utility. The more you consume of a commodity, the less you will add to your total utility. Okay? Till you reach a level where you add nothing. Okay? And because you are rational, definitely you will stop. Remember, let me repeat for the 1 millionth time. Money is not in our story here. I'm talking about consumption of things that are sold for free. Okay? So this table explains the total utility theory. Okay? There is nothing more here than what I said. This is how we calculate marginal utility using this formula right here. Okay? Every time it is delta U, marginal utility is delta U divided by delta O. Okay? The change in total utility with respect to the numbers consumed of oranges, which is any delta, it means a number minus a number. So delta total utility, okay, it means this number minus this number, and then this number minus this number, and this number minus this number. This is delta utility. Delta orange is this number minus this number divided by this number minus this number, and so on. And the story continues out there. This total utility will be increasing at a decreasing rate because the function looks like this. And the marginal utility will keep on declining till it becomes a 0. And if you continue consumption, it will be 0. Hopefully this is clear. I cannot explain it more than that. Now, forget about this theory. I'm going to explain the other theory, which is called the revealed preference theory or the indifference curve theory. Okay? In this theory, okay, we'll still have utility. Still, the objective of the consumer is to maximize his or her satisfaction or utility or pleasure or happiness given his or her limited income. It is the same thing. But we will express the preferences, تفضيلات يعني, of the consumer in a rather different way. We will not assign numbers to the levels of happiness that you receive, but rather you will see in a moment how things will go like that. Okay, we will have, for example, here in that case, we will talk about commodity bundles, and we will have a curve like that, indicating, for example, the first commodity consumed. In the book he used, or in the notes he used apples, he gave it A, and here he used B. Okay, and in the what does it mean indifference curve? The indifference curve is a curve that looks like this. Okay, it is a curve that is negatively sloped, comes from up to down and to the southeast direction. Okay, it doesn't touch the axis, the vertical or the horizontal. We call it asymptotic to the axis. It means comes very close to the axis, but it doesn't touch it. Okay, and it is convex to the origin. Convex means it takes the shape and not the other shape like this. Okay, it doesn't look like that, for example. Okay, so these are the characteristics of the indifference curve. How many indifference curves we have, or an individual consumer have? Each individual consumer has infinite number of indifference curve. All of them, they have the same shape, and they never intersect, because if they intersect, we will have loss of logic. Okay, loss of logic, as you will see in a moment. Now, what does it mean? This is indifference curve 1. I'm going to call it I1. This is indifference curve 2. I'm going to call it I2. And this is indifference curve 3. I'm going to call it I3. And in this graphing, the direction of preference is northeast, because more is preferred to less. Now, let us look at indifference curve 1. Let us have two commodity bundles, this one and this one. This one has, remember, commodity bundle, it means a bag that contains some of the commodity A and some of the commodity B. Let us read here what we will have. Okay. Let us say here we have 5. This number, let us say we have 2. So this commodity bundle has 5 apples and 2 bread. This commodity B, if you go down there, this number is definitely less than 5. I'm going to say 2. Okay, and this number is definitely bigger than 2. I'm going to say 4. Okay, so here I'm having two commodity bundles. Okay, these two commodity bundles. Okay, one of them has, or two bags, one of them has 5 apples and the 2 breads, and the other has 2 apples and 4 breads. Remember, bigger of one of them, bigger amounts of one of them, and smaller amounts of the other. Okay. As a result, we say that the consumer is indifferent between consuming commodity bundle A, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to give it the number. Let us say commodity bundle A. Let us give it. Okay, this one I'm talking about. This one. I don't want to use symbols for it. Okay. It means that the consumer is indifferent between consuming these commodity bundles on I1 or indifference curve 1. And the same thing applies to any commodity bundle along I1. All of them, they are the same to the consumer. The consumer is indifferent to consuming any commodity bundle as long as that commodity bundle lies on I1, because they give the consumer the same level of satisfaction. Okay? Now let us move to I2. Any commodity bundle on I2 is preferred to any commodity bundle on I1, because it at least will have more of either apple or bread or more of both. And since more is preferred to less, so any commodity bundle on indifference curve 2 is preferred to any commodity bundle on indifference curve 1. And the same thing here on commodity bundle on indifference curve 3. Any commodity bundle on indifference curve 3 is preferred to any commodity bundle on indifference curve 2, which is preferred to any commodity bundle on indifference curve 1. Okay? Remember, the indifference curves never intersect with each other. Okay? And they are negatively sloped. Negatively sloped means that as you increase the amount of apple by 1 unit, you have to decrease the amount of bread by some units in order for you to obtain the same level of satisfaction. What is the slope of any indifference curve here? According to the symbols I used, the slope of any indifference curve here, in any one of them, is delta B divided by delta A, which means what happens to the amount consumed of commodity B as a result of increasing the amount of consumed of commodity A by 1 unit. Okay, remember, you measure the slope of that indifference curve on regarding one indifference curve, and we call that, in that case, we call it marginal rate of substitution, MRS, A for B. A for B. This is equal to delta B divided by delta A, and this number must be negative. Why negative? Because in order for the consumer to increase the amount consumed by commodity A by 1 unit, he has to, or she has to, decrease the amount of consumed of bread by some units in order for the consumer to receive the same level of satisfaction. Remember, marginal rate of substitution is the slope of the indifference curve. Okay, it is the rate of change of bread with respect to apples. How much bread, how much units of bread I'm willing to sacrifice in order to obtain 1 extra unit of apple and still get the same level of satisfaction. This is the meaning of it. It is the slope of the indifference curve. Okay, remember, the slope of the utility function was called the marginal utility. The slope of the indifference curve is called the marginal rate of substitution, A for B, which is delta, whatever is measured horizontally, by delta, whatever is measured, whatever is measured vertically, divided by delta, whatever is measured horizontally. And here I said we express the preferences of the individual consumer via the second theory of consumer behavior, known as the theory of revealed preference. In this theory, we do not assign numbers indicating how much an individual is happy to consume a certain amount of a commodity, okay, or not. We use the commodity bundle concept, which, okay, all what you see here in this graph is the commodity bundle concept. All the dots that I have on any indifference curve is a commodity bundle, okay? And I said here, if you have bread measured vertically, which I have here, denoted by B, and the apples measured horizontally, I denoted by A, okay, then any point in that two-dimensional sphere في البعد الثنائي الأبعاد ده is a commodity bundle. It means that it is a bag that contains the sum of A and sum of B, indicating some apples consumed along with some bread. Okay. The curve which passes through all of the commodity bundles, giving the consumer the same level of satisfaction, is called the indifference curve. Okay, which is right here. Here I have bread. Here I have apple. And this is the indifference curve I'm talking about. Here it tells you that any commodity bundle on that. How many commodity bundles we have on that indifference curve? Infinite number of commodity bundles, because the indifference curve is a smooth curve, and any smooth curve in the science of mathematics is a curve that is composed of infinite number of points, عدد لا نهائي من النقط. And as a result, we have infinite number of commodity bundles. Okay, that gives the consumer the same level of satisfaction. Okay, where some of these commodity bundles will contain a lot of A and a little of B, and some of them will contain a lot of B and a little of A. But to the consumer, all of these commodity bundles and everything in between gives the consumer the same level of satisfaction. Okay, and that's why we call it indifference curve. You are indifferent, it means ما تفرقش معاك. If I tell you, if you come to my home for a visit, I'm going to ask you, do you want coffee or tea? You say, I'm indifferent. What does it mean you are indifferent? It means that either coffee or tea will give you the same level of happiness. You don't care which one of them. Your mother will ask you, do you want to eat rice or spaghetti? Yeah, mama, I am indifferent. What does it mean you are indifferent? It means that whether you consume rice or spaghetti, they will give you the same level of satisfaction. She can cook whatever she wants to cook. It doesn't matter to you, you are indifferent. The curve here, the indifference curve, must be smooth. Okay, smooth يعني just like my head. Remember my head. I have a bald head. I do not have hair in my head. Okay, ناعم يعني. Okay, it means that the curve is composed of infinite number of points, not broken lines. Okay, going from left to right, as you can see here, and from up to down. Okay, has negative slope. It means that what is the slope of that curve? It is B, delta B divided by delta A. Remember, I put here, I measured amount consumed of B vertically and amount consumed of A horizontally. Now suppose I want to write a function here, because a function is a relationship between B and A. Remember, here I have only two variables, B and A. Here يا حبايب قلبي, we have B is a function of A. Why did I say that? Because in the science of mathematics, if you have a variable measured vertically and another variable measured horizontally, then whether you like it or not, it means that they are related, and it means that the type of relationship is B is a function of A. Why did I say B first? Why I put B as the dependent variable and A is the independent variable? Okay, it doesn't matter, as I said, because I measured B vertically, I have to say B is a function of A. Suppose that I measured the A vertically and put B horizontally. In that case, A will be a function of B. What does it mean B is a function of A? It means that when the amount consumed of A changes, the amount consumed of B will change accordingly. And that's why, according the slope of this function is delta B divided by delta E, and has to be negative. Why it has to be negative? Because if you consume more A, it means that you consume less B. So this is a negative slope. Okay? And that slope has a name which is called marginal rate of substitution, MR. S AB. AB it means delta B divided by delta A. MRS marginal rate of substitution. Okay, marginal يعني اللي هو indicating slope, because the word marginal in economics means the slope. Okay, marginal rate, because we are talking about how much you will add to how much you will consume of commodity B when you increase the amount of A by a unit. This is called rate. Okay, معدل. You are talking about what will happen to B when the amount of A changes. Substitution, because when you increase the amount of A, by definition you have to decrease the amount of B in order for you as a consumer to remain on the same indifference curve or to obtain the same level of satisfaction. So each word, each letter in the slope of the indifference curve MRS, marginal, because you are talking about slope, addition to total. Okay, rate, because you are talking about what happens to B when A changes. Substitution, because it means that when you consume extra A, it means you are consuming less B in order for you as a consumer to remain on the same curve and obtain the same level of satisfaction. So here the curve which passes through all the commodity bundles, giving the consumer the same level of utility or satisfaction, is called the indifference curve, which is graphed here. This curve must be smooth, as we said, going from left to right and from up to down, has negative slope, okay, that keeps on decreasing as we move from up to, this is very important, keeps on decreasing as we move from up to down. Let us say that, okay, I'm going to measure the slope here. Okay, remember when I showed you in class, I'm going to take a tangent here, and I'm going to take a tangent here. Okay, which one is more sloped? The tangent here, I'm going to call it tangent 1 or tangent 2. Remember here, if I'm standing here, I would fall faster than if I'm standing here. Okay, because line A is steeper than line B. يعني sloped more than line B. واقف line A واقف, line B نايم. Okay? So as we move from up to down and to the right, the slope keeps on decreasing, which means the value of delta B divided by delta A, it will keep on decreasing. It is negative all the way. When we talk about the slope, we talk about negative number. In economics, minus 5 is bigger than minus 1. Okay? So please forget about the negative. When I say it keeps on decreasing, they are all negative, but the number keeps on declining. Okay, so the curve must be smooth going from left to right and from up to down, has negative slope that keeps on decreasing as we move from up to down, and is convex to origin. Convex to origin, this is something very complicated in mathematics. But in general, convex to the origin بنسميه محدب تجاه نقطة الأصل. It means that the curve, okay, this is just to show you in math, a function like that, this is convex to the origin. If you have it like this, this is concave to the origin. ده بنسميه محدب تجاه نقطة الأصل، ده بنسميه مقعر تجاه نقطة الأصل. So this is convex. This is concave. Okay, convex يعني محدب, concave يعني مقعر. It takes that shape, doesn't take that shape. Okay, the indifference curve takes the shape to the left, not to the right. Moreover, indifference curve never intersect with each other, and because if they intersect, you will have a violation of logic. Okay, which means, for example, I prefer commodity bundle A to commodity bundle, sorry, I prefer commodity bundle 1 to commodity bundle 2. Okay, and I prefer commodity bundle 2 to commodity bundle 3. Okay, so if you prefer commodity bundle 1 to 2 and you prefer 2 to 3, it means by definition is one is preferred to 3. Okay, if they intersect, you will have a violation of that law. هتلاقي فيه تعارض. Okay, we do not want to say, for example, Sherin is heavier than Sana, and Sana is heavier than Lubna. In that case, Sherin must be heavier than Lubna. Okay, if you don't, if you have intersection, if you have, for example, something like that, you have an indifference curve like this and another one like that, you will have a violation of that thing at the point right here. Okay. We can have infinite number of indifference curve. As I told you, have indifference map, very similar to the contour line that you studied in geology if you studied geology. Making what is known as an indifference map, just like the contour lines that you studied in geology, if you studied geology. The direction of preference is always northeast, as I said. It is always in this direction, because more is preferred to less. Because the indifference curve is a smooth curve, it has many slopes, infinite number of slopes, because it is composed of infinite number of points. And when I tell you to measure the slope, you have to tell me at what point you want to talk about, because the slope is composed of infinite number of points. So here I said if you have bread measured on the horizontal axis, which is the amount consumed of bread measured vertically, and the amount consumed of apples measured horizontally. Okay, and please, I don't want you to say, doctor, apple is much preferred to bread because apple is more expensive. No, forget about that. Okay, apple and bread could be anything in life. Okay, for example, here we assume that we will denote bread by B, we denote apple by A, then the slope of that curve is minus delta B divided by delta A. Why it is minus? Because in order for you to increase the amount consumed of A by 1 unit, you have to decrease the amount consumed of B by some units in order for the consumer to remain on the same indifference curve. The slope of the indifference curve is always negative to reflect the substitution between apples and the bread. If, for example, the slope is minus 2.3, it means simply that if I increase the amount consumed of apple by 1 unit, by how many units I have to decrease the amount consumed of bread in order for me to obtain the same level of satisfaction. In that case, it will be you have to decrease the amount consumed of bread by 2.3 units of bread. Okay, so if the slope is minus 2.3, it means that if apple goes up, if the amount consumed of apple goes up by 1 unit, the amount consumed of bread must go down by 2.3 units in order for you to have the same level of satisfaction, in order for you to be indifferent between the consumption of A and B. Okay? Or I can say it differently. I don't have every time to say if A goes up by 1 unit, what will happen to B? I can say suppose that A went down, decreased by 1 unit. Okay, and I have a slope of minus 2.3. It means that if A goes down by 1 unit, B must be increased by 2.3 units in order for me to have the same level of satisfaction. The whole point is that more of A means less of B, and more of B means less of A. That's all. Here it says, if, for example, the slope is minus 2.3, delta B divided by delta A is minus 2.3, it means that I am willing to sacrifice, okay, أنا مستعد أضحي ب 2.3 units of B, okay, مستعد أضحي ب 2.3 units of B, of bread, in order for me to increase one extra apple. Okay, that's the meaning of it. The slope of the indifference curve will keep on decreasing in its negative value as we move from up to down and to the right of the curve. Okay, so if you have a curve like that, for example, okay, this is bread, this is apple, okay, remember, if I measure the slope here and if I measure the slope here, take a tangent here, take a tangent here, okay, the slope here, this is 0.1 or commodity bundle 1, this is 0.2 or commodity bundle 2. Slope at commodity bundle 1 is bigger, way bigger than slope at commodity bundle 2. Remember that both slopes are negative. Okay, so one of them at A, for example, minus 10, at B is minus 0.1. The slope of the indifference here will keep on decreasing in its negative value as we move from up to down and to the right of the indifference curve. For example, a slope of minus 8, if found, I'm just explaining what I just said, if found on the upper left-hand corner of the indifference curve, then this value of that slope will be minus 0.5 probably at the very end of the indifference curve. Please examine the shape of any indifference curve. It looks like this. Okay, there is nothing here. That's what I just explained to you right here. Okay. In mathematics, here a reminder. I shouldn't have done that, but just as a reminder, because I mentioned that in class and I mentioned that already 1 million times. If you have a function y equal a function of x, I remember now I left economics and I went to mathematics. Then the slope of that function is delta y divided by delta x. This is called the slope of the function, the first derivative of the function, the rate of change of y with respect to x. Or in economics, we add the word marginal function. Marginal function because we call y is a function of x, the total function, or the mother function. We can also call that slope the rate of change of y with respect to x. Likewise, in economics, the slope of the indifference curve is the change. Likewise, it means بنفس الطريقة. The slope of the indifference curve is the change in the commodity mentioned on the vertical axis, in that case bread, divided by the amount change of the commodity of whatever is measured on the horizontal axis. So delta B divided by delta A, which is negative, represents the slope of the indifference curve, or simply the marginal rate of substitution of A for B. Okay? Or alternatively, بطريقة تانية, how many units of B the consumer is willing to sacrifice, is willing to forego, is willing to give up in order for the consumer to obtain one extra unit of commodity A. Okay? I explained all that before. There is nothing new here. As we move from up to down along the indifference curve, as I told you, here I have B and here I have A, and this is the indifference curve. As more I move from up to down, going in that direction, okay, that is moving from upper left corner of the indifference curve to the lower right corner of the indifference curve, that slope or marginal rate will keep on declining. Okay, and that's why, because the reason why, because we have something called the law of diminishing margin into substitution. Okay, the slope will keep on declining as you move from up to down. In indifference curve never intersect with each other, as I told you, and they never touch the axis. Okay, they approach the axis very closely but never touch the axis. We call that asymptotic in the science of mathematics. I'm going to write the word to you inshallah when I see you. Okay, because if I write it here, it is a little hard. Okay, asymptotic, E S Y M P T O T I C. This is an expression in mathematics. Okay, let me just correct that A. This is Y. Asymptotic. It means that the curve approaches the axes, the horizontal and the vertical, but never touches them. The reason they do not intersect is easy. See page 23 on indifference curve 1. Okay, he's referring to a graph that is on chapter 3. I'm going to go through it. Okay, do not bother yourself, do not even read that part. Okay, because as I told you before, it is in a contradiction of logic. If I say that commodity bundle 1 is preferred to commodity bundle 2 and commodity bundle 2 is preferred to commodity bundle 3, then by definition commodity bundle 1 must be compared to commodity bundle 3. Okay? If 1 is preferred to 2, 2 is preferred to 3, then 1 must be preferred to 3. If the indifference curves intersect, then we will violate that logical assumption. Another way we express the slope of the indifference curve, here if you read all that, you will find that the slope of the indifference curve is either, okay, let us say delta B, as I said in my example, delta B, يا ساتر يا رب, divided by delta A, and it is negative, or given a mathematical proof, marginal utility of A divided by marginal utility of B, and it is also negative. This is what is the, both of them are negative. This is another way of saying that, and it has a proof that is, I can show it to you on board, or it doesn't have to be. It's a little, not complicated, but no need for that. That's what I want you to know. So the marginal rate of substitution, okay, of B for A, all that is MRS AB. It is either delta B divided by delta A or mu A, which is marginal utility of A divided by mu of B. Okay? The proof is not important for you to know. Remember that when we mentioned that the marginal utility of apples is what happens to the total utility as a result of consuming an extra unit of apple, it means that what happens, it is marginal utility of apples, it is delta utility, total utility يعني, divided by delta apples, which means what will happen to your total satisfaction or pleasure as the level of consumption of apples goes up by 1 unit. Marginal utility of bread, it is simply delta U divided by delta B, or what happens to your total satisfaction if bread increases by 1 more unit. Along the indifference curve, this is the proof why we have that. Along the indifference curve, there is no change in utility. Delta utility is 0. Why delta utility is 0? No change in utility because by definition, an indifference curve, it means that the consumer will obtain the same level of satisfaction anywhere along a specified indifference curve. That's why they call it indifference curve. Because by definition, the consumer is indifferent when consuming any commodity bundle along the same indifference curve. This means that delta utility is 0 along the same indifference curve. This means that along the indifference curve, there is no change in utility. We know that already. Doesn't need a genius. Accordingly, بالتبعية يعني, dividing marginal utility of A by marginal utility of B will get you delta B divided by delta A, which is the slope of the indifference curve. Okay, so here I put marginal utility of A equal the change in total utility divided by delta A. Marginal utility of B is the change in total utility of B divided by delta B. Okay, and because delta U is 0, okay, because delta U is equal to 0 along the same indifference curve, so the total delta U are equal to 0, and both will be crossed out, leaving U as delta B divided by delta A. Cross multiply will get you mu of A times delta A is equal to mu of B times delta B, which means that delta B divided by delta A is equal to marginal utility of A divided by marginal utility of B. Okay? Let us see here. I'm going to show it to you. Marginal utility of A equal delta U divided by delta A. Cross multiply طريقة المقص زي ما بيقولوا هيبقى delta U is equal to delta A times mu of A. Along an indifference curve, delta U is equal to 0, which means that delta A times mu of A هيبقى 0. If you look at this is from this part. From this part, marginal utility of B is equal to delta U divided by delta B. Cross multiply المقص. It means that delta U is equal to delta B times marginal utility of B. Delta U, okay, call that equation 1, call that equation 2. From 1 and 2, okay, because delta U in both cases, because along an indifference curve there is no change in utility. So I'm going to take delta U away and put 0. I'm going to take in 1. I'm going to take delta U in B. I'm going to say equal to 0. In that case, delta A times MUA will be equal to delta B times MUB, which means that delta B divided by delta A is MUA divided by MUB. This is another way of expressing the slope of the indifference curve or the marginal rate of substitution AB. This is an example of that we'll talk about later on about the demand schedule. Okay. It is not important here. Demand schedule بنسميه منحنى الطلب because out of that we have to know the demand function of the consumer. Okay? What are the factors that affect the quantity demanded of a certain commodity that the consumer consumes? Forget about that for now because we will come back that to later on, because here I want to tell you that when we graph the indifference, the demand function, here remember, forget about what I mentioned before. Okay, demand function, I'm talking about something else. The demand function is a function of QD, which is the quantity demanded of a certain commodity, and its own price. Okay, so forget about that. Ignore this slide. Ignore this slide for now. We're going to talk about demand functions later on. Please ignore it. Okay, I'm sorry guys. And this is the end of it. Inshallah, I'm going to be covering that part again from chapter 3. Okay, I'm going to be covering, there will be repetitions, a lot of repetitions. Okay, but probably will be some graphs that of use to you, and then I have to proceed to go to the demand function part. Thank you very much. Hope I was of help. Bye bye.